In this video, we're going to talk about REEF and how the REEF team has made some mistakes in the case against Alameda. Do I still think REEF is bullish? You'll see it in this video. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to a new video on Pongo BTC. Today we're going to talk about REEF again. But before I start, I hugely want to thank you for all the attention that I've got over the last few weeks. We are almost at 100 subscribers, 77 right now on the moment of recording this. And I get closer and closer to this milestone of 1,000 subscribers where I can start monetizing my videos. I hugely want to thank you for this. If you are not subscribed yet, it's definitely worth it. I'll talk about altcoins like REEF and like Avalanche almost on a weekly basis. And I also do some technical analysis on BTC and Ethereum. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please press that button below. And while you're there, anyways, press the like button on this video. Let's get started on REEF. Alright, so there is a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in the REEF space. A lot of FUD happening. And that's mostly because of the case between REEF.finance and Alameda. So before I start into the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, let's go to the beginning on where it all started. And it all started with this tweet that REEF.finance put out. Alameda Research invests $20 million into REEF.finance, which in itself obviously is a very bullish statement. But first let's go into who Alameda Research really is. I have their webpage open right here. And we can see that Alameda Research was founded in October 2017. So that was during the previous bull run. And they are a team that right now manage over $100 million in digital assets and trade $600 million to $1.5 billion per day across thousands of products. The one thing you should take out of this is that Alameda is a big deal and they are managing a lot of money. So when they are investing $20 million into REEF, that should be a good thing, right? Well, it was for 3 days and the price started rallying until this tweet happened from Sam Trabucco. And he stated 5 things. The first thing he stated was that Alameda is not affiliated with REEF. Second thing, Alameda does not endorse REEF. Third thing, we agreed to an OTC trade, which stands for over-the-counter trade with REEF. They immediately went to the press to brag. Fourth point, they then reneged on the OTC trade. And the fifth point, we obviously do not recommend anyone to do business with REEF in any way. Alright, so reading this tweet, this is pretty bearish, right? What Sam Trabucco is saying here is that they don't really like REEF. So why did they really buy $20 million of REEF if they don't really like it? Well, the case is that they don't like REEF recently, but they did at the time that they bought REEF. And that's because the deal that they made. There's a lot of miscommunication between Alameda and REEF, and I think there is some blame to put on both sides. However, I want to be objective in this case to see whether I want to stay invested into REEF or not. And the conclusion will come at the end. So, to get an objective view on both the REEF side and on the Alameda side, we have to read both sides. So right here, I've read the Medium article by REEF on their official response to the recent events regarding Alameda. And I won't go over the whole article here, but I'll give you a summary of what is in there. First of all, what REEF is stating is that Alameda wanted to make an investment up to $80 million. Keep this up to $80 million into account because it becomes important later. Right now, they bought $20 million worth of REEF, and they have sent it to Alameda to engage them as a long-term strategic investor in the REEF ecosystem. So the purpose for REEF to include Alameda and to give them a discount on all the tokens that they bought over the counter was because they saw them as a long-term strategic investor in the REEF ecosystem. They gave a 20% discount in total. This might seem unfair, but it's not really a big deal. This happens a lot in these crypto projects, and they're putting a lot of funds in here. But since they think that Alameda will be a long-term strategic investor, this discount is not harmful to the REEF ecosystem. And now it becomes to get a bit shady for REEF, because they sent the tokens to Alameda, but REEF saw that they immediately sent the $20 million to the Binance exchange, from their account to the Binance exchange. And their assumption is that they were gonna offload all the coins and gonna dump the coins on the market, which obviously wouldn't be what they want, because they just gave them a 20% discount. So if they're gonna offload everything on Binance, they would just grab a quick buck and they wouldn't be the long-term investors that they were looking for. Well, 2 points in this. First of all, the coins were sent to Binance, and there is no proof that they actually offloaded the tokens. The only thing we can see is that these tokens were sent to Binance, but we can't see what is actually done with them. The second point here is that REEF never put into the terms of the deal that they should lock these tokens up for a certain amount. This was just a trade that has been made. They gave a discount, but they didn't give any terms to it. So theoretically, legally, Alameda was perfectly allowed to sell these tokens immediately according to the terms. Alright, so now this has happened, but they only put in 20 million while they wanted to put in 80 million. So REEF has decided to not do the rest of the deal anymore because they didn't trust Alameda anymore, because it looked like they were dumping their coins. Therefore, they told Alameda that they wouldn't do the rest of the trade anymore, and the 60 million could stay at their side. This is something that Sam Trabucco didn't agree with. They said that they actually did have an agreement already on the 80 million for a 20% discount. This was agreed on via message, so there was not a contract, but they agreed on it via message, which is legally binding. And they didn't agree with it, and then a lot of other stuff happened. So this is the REEF side of the story. And REEF definitely saw some shady things with the coins being sent to Binance and didn't trust them anymore. Now on to the Alameda side of the business. Alright, so Alameda's blog post is a bit more basic. They simply have a small explanation or notes, and for the rest, as a response, they just posted the whole history of their messages. And I think this is quite interesting. So first I want to give a summary of the events. The first thing that they state is that REEF states that we initially invested $20 million and additionally conveyed interest in investing another $60 million. This is not true. We initially agreed on an $80 million trade and locked in the price for the entire size. After settling the first tranche, REEF reneged and refused to settle the following tranches. So, in the contrary to what REEF said, what they said is they wanted to make an investment up to $80 million. Alameda actually said they already agreed on the terms for the $80 million trade, and only $20 million were already agreed upon. Second thing that they state, clearly there were some differing expectations around the trade in terms of PR, etc. We apologize for any miscommunications on our part that may have contributed to that. However, we feel that the trade was agreed on unambiguously, and that the backing out after the fact is an act of bad faith in the part of REEF. So the second point is that they don't really agree with the PR that REEF has done. So for example, this Twitter post and kind of bumping up the hype around Alameda investing into REEF. And the third point that they state is, although it's not relevant for the terms of the deal, it's not true that Alameda immediately sold all of the REEF. So they're clearly stating that they did not sell all of the REEF. Even though they sent it to Binance, they didn't sell it. What they're also stating in this point is that it's not relevant for the terms of the deal. So they didn't agree on any terms on where they were not allowed to sell the REEF yet. Alright, right here there is a dialogue between Alameda and REEF. I don't want to go into depth into this dialogue, but I will post all the links that I discuss in the description. So if you want to read this dialogue, please do some research. I think it's very useful. There's only one thing I want to note about this dialogue, and that's that Alameda pretty smartly have excluded some parts of their dialogue. And that's something that Reef has pointed out. And it kind of gets nasty in these things that get left out. So let's go into those. So right here on Twitter, we see that Denko Mashensky, I hope that I pronounced his name right, the CEO of Reef, says, "I can't believe you removed the threats and other comments we made. You guys are as shady as it gets. Hashtag boycott FTX." So these are also pretty strong, strong comments from Denko, and there's really some beef going on between these two. What we can see in the screenshot here is that Alameda really has done some harsh comments to Reef. It became clear that they didn't want to go through with the deal anymore. So they were pretty mad about it. And they said three things. We are likely to, one, publicly announce that we aren't and won't work with the Reef team. Well, first of all, that's what they did in the tweet that Sam Trabucco sent out. Second of all, delist Reef on their own exchange, FTX. And third of all, this is the most extreme one in my opinion, work with Binance and other exchanges on delisting Reef. So they're so mad about their own deal that they are completely disregarding the whole project and they are really pressuring them to go through with the deal. Otherwise, they will delist them on their own exchange and even convince other exchanges to also delist them. This is pretty ballsy, I think, and I think this is also not the way to go. Even though if you're not okay with this, please go get your coins legally. Go take them to court, but don't pressure them like this on the delisting. And you're not only hurting Reef, but also hurting all the other investors. Why not go to the legal side and demand that you will go through with the deal? So I think this is also pretty bad on Alameda's part, and this is also why they left it out in their own Medium post. Then at last there was this opinion by this user on Twitter, which just stated all of the events and his opinion on them and how people acted. And I think this was really interesting to see another point of view. He did specifically point out that he knows the Alameda team, so he might be a bit biased. But I think this was really nice to read, and I will leave this in the description if you want to read through it yourself. I really recommend it if you're deciding whether you want to invest in a Reef or actually pull your coins out. So now into my opinion on a Reef and what has happened. Well, obviously, we have rallied over the last days up to a pretty high price of 5.7 cents, which is really nice. But as soon as the news about Alameda came out, the price dumped pretty massively to a point where it is right now. And the total dumpage was around 30%. And everyone who was holding Reef probably has felt this 30% move. So what do I think now about a Reef? Well, fundamentally, Reef hasn't changed. They're still putting out the same product as they were before. They only made a very bad deal with Alameda. And I do think Reef is in the wrong here. If they have decided on certain terms, they should go through with these terms and actually give Alameda what they promised them. However, I do think Alameda also has acted quite immature in this part. So it's definitely not only on the wrong on the Reef part, because they definitely made some allegations against Reef on delisting their coins and such. So what do I think now about Reef? Will I stay invested in it? Do I buy more? Will I sell my stack? I will probably buy more because of this. Because of this event, the price is pushed down 30%, but fundamentally Reef didn't change. The Polka Defiance event is still coming up in 2 days, and I think it will get pretty hyped. But this was definitely bad for the reputation of Reef, and they should be more mature in their business dealing. However, their technology is still very good. They're pushing out a lot of updates, and I think if Reef changes their attitude, it can still become one of the biggest coins or the biggest gainers of March. So I didn't change my opinion on Reef. I think it was very important to discuss this part and why the prices actually moved down 30%. But I will take this as an opportunity to buy some more Reef and ride it all the way up. I hope you appreciated this somewhat longer video on REEF, and it was also a bit more serious, not really on the fundamentals, but kind of on the events that were happening with REEF. That's also why I call it an emergency video, since this was kind of urgent for everyone who is in REEF. I think even if you will still hold it, I think it's important to know what's going on. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please press the subscribe button, press the like button, and I love the support that you guys are giving us. I love the live stream that we did lately, and hopefully I see a lot of you guys back in the live streams, and I'll see you guys soon. Thank you for watching, and see you later.